Hello, everybody. It's your friendly digital technology librarian, Christy here. And it is, of course, Friday. So, of course, I have yet another Film Rec Friday for everybody out there. Um, we are halfway through February already, and February is Black History Month. And so I really wanted to put together a list of films that tell stories from a point of view of people of color. And I think that I've put together a pretty solid list that kind of tracks all different genres, that, you know, takes themes that are both more serious and then a little bit more lighthearted and just puts them all together. Um, some of these are documentaries, some of them are, of course, your standard films, but I do believe that all of them have really resonant stories that will absolutely stick with you, that will make you think, that will, I hope, try and ask you to put yourselves in the character's shoes. And, that's really what I was going for. So, you know, as always, all of these recommendations are available totally for free with the use of your Milan-Berlin library card. They all come from our three video services, which are CleveNet's Overdrive, Hoopla Digital, and Canopy. And I hope that you will give these a try and see if any of them really speak to you. And of course, I would love to hear about which ones do, or if you have other recommendations for people as well. So without any further ado, I want to go ahead and dive into these recs. As always, my first two recommendations come from CleveNet's Overdrive, and the first of those is for a movie called Fruitvale Station. Now, Fruitvale Station is a really critically acclaimed film. It is based on a true story and follows the last day of Oscar Grant, a 22-year-old Bay Area resident who was trying to really make a change in his life. The whole story takes place on New Year's Eve, and it just follows what should have been a fairly typical day and turned out to be something tragically not. The title character, or the main character, Oscar, is played by Michael B. Jordan, who a lot of people will recognize from, say, the Black Panther films. He played the villain character in that, and he does an amazing job with Oscar. The character is not perfect in any way, shape, or form. He's definitely a flawed individual who is actively trying, though struggling, to build a better life for himself and for his girlfriend and daughter. Now, as with all like biopics, there's always some embellishment, but according to a lot of the stories that I read, including like firsthand accounts of the happenings of the day, and I'm trying not to like spoil things, which seems weird since it actually happened, but it seems like the main gist and thrust of the story is very much intact within this film. And I think I already said that this did win like several awards and received tons of accolades from critics. But the story moves along in a way that, even if you know what's going to happen, since of course it is based on a true story, you are utterly wrapped up in what's going on screen, because you 100% are always asking, how does it get to that ending? Um, and that's what we're supposed to ask. How does this regular day turn into a tragedy? Uh, this is one of those films that is not an easy watch, and there are quite a few on my list. I'll say that right now. Uh, but it is totally an important film to see, I think, um, because it makes you have those questions. It makes you wonder how a normal standard day can turn around so quickly, and how this situation occurred in the first place, how it ever even became a thing. So, if you are looking for a movie that is well acted and is well written, has excellent trajectory, like I said, the pacing is really really gripping. Please check out Fruitvale Station. It is 100% worth watching. While a difficult film, it is one that will keep you enthralled while you're watching it. Um, and it's just, like I said, I think an important film to see. My second recommendation from CleveNet is for the film Lee Daniels The Butler. Now, Lee Daniels The Butler is kind of loosely based on uh, some circumstances with a real White House butler, but the primary character within the movie is a totally fictional gentleman. He simply has experiences that they pulled from others. Um, the main character who plays the African American White House butler is played by Forrest Whitaker, who is always amazing. Like, I've never seen him in a role that isn't phenomenal. Uh, and we end up watching his life as he serves 8 American presidents over 3 decades, I want to say. Um, and it's just really interesting to watch his character's arc, where he's come from to where he is at the end of the movie. It's of course full of dramatic license. Like I said, the character in the film isn't real, but it's based off of real circumstances and real people's situations. Um, but you are totally caught up in his storyline. Um, and not only his storyline, but America's storyline as well. As he, as his life shifts and changes and evolves, America's landscape is doing the same thing. Um, so, of course, like I said, you have Forrest Whitaker in the lead role. You have amazing performances by Oprah Winfrey, who plays his wife. You've got fantastic performances of the presidents, like Robin Williams is in this. Um, James Marsden, Alan Rickman. You've got just like it's a huge cast. So if you are somebody who loves ensemble films that have like a really a heavily packed cast, this is definitely one to check out. Um, but yet the storyline itself is again really quite gripping, in that you are not only following Whitaker's character, but you're also following the lives of all of the people around him. You're following his family in particular, and how his relationship with his son evolves over time, and how it at times is really fraught with tension, because it looks like the two of them are coming at the same problem from two totally different perspectives. And how did it get to that point? How are two people in one family unit so seemingly diametrically opposed? It's just a well done film. If you are interested in American history, if you like stories about family, if you like stories that um, blend fiction with historical fact, definitely check out Lee Daniels The Butler, also available on CleveNet. All right, moving right along to our Hoopla digital recommendations. My first Hoopla title is for a movie called The Last Black Man in San Francisco. I absolutely loved this movie. I can't say enough good things about it. It is not a fantasy film at all, but it has this sort of fantasy feel to it. I mean, I don't know if it's simply because of the acting or if it's the script or what, but there's something vaguely magical about it. I loved this movie. Um it had a very Jim Jarmusch feel to it. I guess that's the best way I can put it. If you're a fan of Jarmusch, he did like Eternal Sunshine of the Spotless Mind, uh Be Kind Rewind, stuff like that. This film in particular, I feel like had that kind of a vibe to it. Um, and in any case, the basic plot line follows a young man named Jimmy and his best friend Mont, and they're on this quest to kind of reclaim a house in San Francisco that was supposedly built by Jimmy's grandfather. Um, how San Francisco and the area that we're seeing in particular has become so gentrified and everything, and um, he just wants a callback to home, right? Um, and that's the thrust of the film, which is, it seems very simple and basic, but it's just so easy to fall into. Um, and I guess that's why I kind of have a hard time describing it. Uh, there's almost a surreal quality to certain scenes, and I love that about it. It's very much a real film that's taking place in a contemporary time period. It's not, there are literally zero elements of fantasy, and yet it still feels like there's something fantastical about it. Um, the main character is played perfectly. He has this sort of quality about him that doesn't seem like it can be touched by the world around. Like, no matter how difficult or awful things are, it seems like this character is okay. And I really love characters like that because I think they're so out of the norm. Uh, a lot of times we, or at least in the movies that I really like to watch, we get characters that always feel the weight of the world and that feel like all of this pressure, and he, while he goes through those emotions, I think there's a level of optimism to him that is infectious, and even while you're watching it you start to feel a bit more optimistic about things. um so these two characters are on this quest to reclaim this home. They essentially become kind of squatters in this really posh Victorian house, and life just moves along around them. And it's a series of little events that push the trajectory of the film along. Um, which is not to say that nothing happens. A ton of things happen, but they're really kind of ordinary everyday things. And if not like everyday kind of happenings, they're things that could be part of anybody's life, I think. So there are surprisingly tons of little tiny twists that reveal themselves through the course of the film. And there's never like an ooh, aha kind of moment, but there are like those little revelations, I think, really adds so many layers, and it's just, like I said, it's just a really enjoyable film to watch. It is moving, and it is just really, really lovely. So if you're looking for a film that is quietly appealing, I definitely would say please check out Last Black Man in San Francisco. It is a wonderful movie um, that will definitely keep you entertained from beginning to end. My second recommendation from Hoopla is for a documentary called The Loving Story. Uh, and the other really great thing about this film in particular is it's part of Hoopla's February bonus borrows collections. And that means that it doesn't use up any of your 10 checkouts of the month. So it's like a freebie. So if you're interested at all, make sure you watch this because it's not going to count against your count. Anyway, The Loving Story is a documentary that follows the incredibly moving story of Mildred and Richard Loving, who were a mixed race couple who lived during the period of time when it was actually illegal to be married in a mixed race couple. Um, in several states, including their state in particular. And it takes pieces of actual interviews. So you see, sort of the matter of fact nature which they speak about their relationship, which officials speak about their relationship. Um, we talked to, let me back up just a little bit. Richard and Mildred had essentially grown up together. They'd known each other forever, and they just get married because they're in love and that's what you do. And suddenly they realize that it's a crime. I mean, I guess it had never been described to them as such, and so they just thought it was a perfectly normal thing to do, which obviously it is. Um, all of a sudden, they're being arrested and detained for committing a massive crime. And their choices are jail time or leave the state. Um, these are two people who had grown up in the same place, they lived their entire lives, and they're suddenly being forced to leave just because they are married. Um, and that's really the entire premise of this documentary. It's following then their struggle to show just how wrong those laws are. It's very interesting to watch this documentary, which again has archival footage of them speaking directly, both Mildred and Richard. It has archival footage of their lawyers speaking, and then to watch the feature film that was made just a few years ago that's just called Loving, uh, and to sort of juxtapose the two together. And to be perfectly honest, I actually think that this documentary is far more effective and moving at telling their story than the fictionalized film. Because, of course, usually with a biopic, you have like a little bit of creative license thrown in, you've got drama built into the storyline. But this one, there is plenty of drama going on in the documentary um, because their characters come across so well. Mildred is the more talkative of the two. She's more frank and frank about, not really understanding why this is even an issue. Why should they not be allowed to be married? And Richard is so hesitant to speak a lot of times, but he's just a stoic kind of guy. And when he does speak, there's like always so much impact to it. Like, he loves his wife. That's the end of it. Like, they're married. What does the world expect of them? And it's really so moving. Like, I mean, really, truly. I mean, I broke down and cried a couple of times while I watched it. Um, But yeah, if you're looking for a documentary that is just as moving as any featured film, 100% watch The Loving Story. It's romantic, it's frustrating because of the situation that they're in, it is inspiring, it is, a little bit tragic in spots. So you will 100% run the gamut of emotions while you watch this. So I can't recommend it enough. The Loving Story, a fantastic documentary available on Hoopla Digital. My final two recommendations, as always, come from our Canopy service, and the first of those is for the Oscar award-winning picture Moonlight. Now, Moonlight is one of those films that I really wanted to see in the movie theaters when it first came out, and I just never got to because it didn't play anywhere near us. But I think a couple months before the Oscars came out, I did manage to see it, and um, while a part of me didn't want to be like all caught up in the hype, it was amazing. I just recently rewatched, and it continues to be absolutely amazing. Um, Moonlight is a film that tells the story of a young man's life in three parts, essentially. You have his early childhood, you have his youth, and you have his present day. And all three of those stories obviously are connected by this young man, but have complete stories within themselves, if that makes sense. Like, you have a full arc in each of those sections, and each of those sections also has beautiful moments, like truly poignant relationships, and then also are touched by like serious tragedy in some ways. And I find it really fascinating that they were able to have such complete stories, um, without taking up too much time, without, introducing a ton of new characters, each separate story being equally impactful. Um, so Chiron is the young man we follow. He is shy, he is quiet, and he has a rough life. Um, he gets, we see how he gets caught up in things that he has no desire to be caught up in. It's really his situation in life that pulls him in the directions in which he goes. And let me tell you, it's a feature film that I don't see myself watching a lot. Like, there's some movies that you can watch like tons and tons of times, but the two times that I've seen it, both times I've had like visceral reactions to it. Like, I have cried at the end. Both times that I watched, I have like wanted to fling things at the screen, on multiple occasions. Like, I mean, you really get caught up in this young man's story, and there's so many incredibly beautiful performances. Like, there's all of the acting is so nuanced from everyone, like across the board. Whether you're talking about his father figure, who is an incredibly flawed individual. Like, I can't stress that enough. So many of these characters are incredibly flawed individuals, and yet they aren't villains. They aren't people that, are twirling mustaches. Like, there's nothing like that. It's just the circumstances of life, and it makes you really ask those kinds of questions, like, why are they doing what they're doing? How did they get there? Um, what could they possibly do to get out of those situations? And there are 100% no simple answers to any of those. And again, that's the whole point. um, i I just really, really find this movie so poignant. It like, even just thinking about it sort of like tugs at my heart in a lot of ways. So if you're looking for a movie that will definitely make you feel, um, like it might make you angry, it might make you sad, it might make you frustrated, but it will 100% make you feel while you're watching it. Check out Moonlight. It's available on Canopy. I believe it's actually also available on Hoopla if you prefer that streaming streaming method. But yes, Canopy, Moonlight, incredible, incredible film. Definitely well deserving of the awards and accolades it received. And my final recommendation is for another documentary. This one is Ken Burns' The Central Park Five. Recently, Netflix came out with a series based on the Central Park Five situation, which, of course, occurred in the late 80s, where a group of young men of color were accused and convicted of assaulting and raping a young woman who had been, I believe, jogging through Central Park in New York City, only to discover that these young men had nothing to do with her assault or rape. And this was only discovered after they had served their time. It's an unbelievable, I mean, it is unbelievable what happened in the first place and how it when it came about and how the justice system did not in any way, shape, or form get served by the incarceration of these five young men. Anyway, it's a really, really impactful documentary. Obviously, it has a very specific point of view, but I think it is a much better watch even than the Netflix series, simply because Ken Burns knows how to make a documentary. You get a lot of different points of view. But you definitely have a very specific thrust to the story that you're going for, that Burns is going for, and it is very effective. It's really solid if you don't know a lot about the situation, especially. I was only 7, I think, when this all happened, so I was kind of oblivious, beyond maybe having a vague recollection of hearing about it on the news. But watching this and seeing footage of like the coverage, it's another one of those. It's a really hard watch, but a really important one to do. I believe, and I found it really amazing when they're interviewing the young men who were affected, uh, how not bitter they seem to be. I mean, like I said, they were incarcerated, not for short periods of time either. And even though this happened to them, there's still like this sense of optimism to them. They are, again, not bitter. They are really eloquent about the situation, which is in direct juxtaposition as to how things happened when they were so young. Um, I don't want to get too deep into all of the little bits and pieces. Those details, of course, you'll find out when you watch it if you choose to. Uh, but when you do see what happened, how the situation was handled by um, just everybody involved, from prosecution to um, police involvement to media coverage, it was just a perfect storm of everything going wrong. So yes, please check out Ken Burns' The Central Park Five, available on Canopy. It is an absolutely fascinating documentary, especially if you've recently watched or are interested in watching the Netflix series. I think this will absolutely give you a whole other dimension to the storyline and what happened. So again, Ken Burns, Central Park 5 on Canopy. And with that, um, I've covered all of my recs for this week's Film Rec Friday. As always, if you have recommendations for films that you think people should be watching, please, please, please comment below. Let us know. I love getting recommendations from friends, and I'm sure other people are always interested in knowing what others are enjoying as well. That goes the same if you have recommendations for themes that you'd like to see us cover. Please recommend those too. And with that, I'm going to go ahead and sign off. Thank you, as always, for joining me and for watching. And we will see you next week. Bye-bye.